I get asked all the time what it's like to live on the West Coast versus the East Coast. And when you're trying to help people relocate to Florida and they don't know how to choose whether they need to be on the West Coast or the East Coast, it's really hard because I live on the West Coast, so I'm partial. But today I went and grabbed my girl April, who lives on the East Coast, who's also a colleague of mine, and we help each other with clients that are trying to figure out East Coast versus West Coast. And so we thought, let's jump on a Zoom and let's have a conversation and help our clients understand the difference a little bit more succinctly. So that's what we did today, and I want to show you that conversation right now. So let's get after it. Hey, future Floridians, I'm Emily. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in the state of Florida, and I live in the Tampa-St. Pete area. And this channel is dedicated to all things living, working, playing, sleeping, eating, and most importantly, our wackadoo real estate market in the Central West Coast. So if you're interested in that, I'd really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. That helps me out a lot. And don't forget to hit that thumbs up if you like this content. And as always, feel free to comment below if you have a question or if you have something to add. I'd love to hear it. Also, I'm a relocation specialist here in Central Florida. So if you're looking to relocate, I can't help you if you don't reach out to me. So all my links are below. Go ahead and send me a text, call me, email me, or more importantly, it's really easy. You can hit my calendar link below and you can jump on my calendar for 30 minutes and we can have a video chat and talk a little bit more about what your plan is. So again, it's really important to kind of try to figure out which coast is best for you. So April and I had a pretty interesting conversation discussing that. So here it is.
So Emily, thanks so much for taking the time today. So Emily is in the West Coast of Florida. She does real estate there and we're under the same brokerage and we actually refer clients back and forth to each other. And today we are talking about the differences of the East Coast of Florida versus the West Coast of Florida. Emily, I'm sure that you have a lot of questions because I get a lot of calls about these questions too.
Yeah, and that's why I was glad that we decided to kind of do this video because it just makes it easier for me being a West Coaster to be able to be more articulate to my clients about what it's like on the East Coast, because obviously I don't live there. So I was really glad we were able to kind of get together today and talk about it. So yeah, I live in Tampa and I service the Tampa-St. Pete area in the Central West Coast of Florida. And it is different than the East Coast, wouldn't you say?
It is, but I don't think there are drastic differences. I think that it's just a preference on certain things. And
yes,
so that's why we're doing this video today. Should we just jump right in and start with like number one?
Yeah, let's start with like the cost of living and housing prices. Let's just jump into it. Okay. I'll start if you don't mind. I was just doing a video on the cost of living in Tampa and St. Pete and how things have changed. And some of the numbers, I don't know on your end, I'll let you talk to that in a minute, but you know, we were below the national average for so long. And then now after COVID, you know, we really kind of skyrocketed. And again, being the best place to live, according to Forbes, for 2 years in a row. So that definitely changes the landscape, right? So I've noticed the cost of living just for myself. And that's what I was telling people on my channel was that I noticed my HOAs went up. I noticed my grocery bill went up. The gas has been sort of up and down. And I don't know about you, but my gas went even just this past 2 weeks from like $310 up to like $360.
Yeah, $370.
And my utility bill went up. So yeah.
Yeah, and kind of the same thing here. We were just under the national average probably 2 or 3 years ago, and now we're well over. There's been a lot of development. I know Tampa has grown tremendously, but I think also I know for a fact that in Tampa downtown, as opposed to, you know, where the new construction is going and where more of the affordable new homes are going, just like in the West Palm Beach kind of area, if you're downtown, it's much more expensive. If you're buying new construction, you're about an hour away from the downtowns. Is that accurate too?
That's pretty accurate. Yeah, obviously we always get people that want the brand new shiny thing, right? And so leading them in Tampa, I usually tell them you're going to find that in North Tampa or you're going to find it on the southeast side of Tampa, and that's nowhere near the downtown.
Yeah.
It's at least Wesley Chapel is our biggest area where all the developments are, as well as to the west of that, which is Land of Lakes and Trinity and Odessa, all the way to the coast. And then from the southeast, it's going to be Brandon, Riverview, all the way down to Ruskin, Apollo Beach. And that, again, is a good 45. It's about 45 minutes to like an hour, to all the fun stuff, I would say. Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's about the same here. And those are great areas, right? New construction, especially the planned developments that they develop, are great options for people that are moving from anywhere. And especially if you need a certain size home, you're at a lower price point, I think they're great choices because you are getting a new product at the best possible price, and they're usually geared to like younger families and all the amenities, and they also have like, decent school zones. But getting back to the cost of living, I mean, in general, in like the Southeast Florida area, I would say, Palm Beach County alone is well over, the national average, about, I would say, in the teens to 20%.
Oh, really?
National. Yeah, I would say, I mean, Boca Raton alone is about 21% greater than the national average, but Boca Raton is also one of the more expensive cities in Palm Beach County. The further south you go, like Fort Lauderdale, Miami, of course, those prices are going to increase as far as housing, because it's very developed and very desirable, and we already have a lot of people there. Now there are some other areas like Boynton Beach that are attractive, but those also have increased in the last 2 years. So those are going to be less expensive, but they shot up and now they're starting to normalize. Isn't that the same where you're at?
Yeah, I was going to say we haven't hit that 20% mark above national average. We're about 5%, but I think we're not far behind you. I was going to ask you, what do you think of the average home prices that you're finding right now in your area?
Well, I do a lot of sales in Boca Raton, but I sell all over Palm Beach County, so I will concentrate on that, I guess. And
okay.
I would say, I mean, I'm in contract right now with a great buyer from California. And we found him a great home, but it's not new. It's older. It is on an incredible piece of land, so a really nice large lot. The location is phenomenal. It's kind of in the middle of Boca Raton, so you're not like super far west. You're not really east, but a great location. He is going to have to do some renovations, but the home was owned by one owner, and it was very well maintained. And he's in contract in the 600s. So I think that's kind of a deal. That's like, it's a deal, but you'll have to put at least, if you wanted to bring it up to 2023 modern standards, you'll probably have to put maybe close to 100,000.
I was going to say probably 100,000, right? That's usually the average. Yeah. Our median home price right now, we're still really at that 450 range. But I'm seeing prices still drop in like 5-8%, nothing too drastic. Are you finding that as well over there?
Yeah, I mean, and I did mention Boca Raton, which is one of the more expensive areas. I would say like in the Boynton Beach area, you can get into something in the 450, but it's not going to be completely updated, but I would say closer in the 500s. And in the West Boynton Beach area, where all the A-rated schools are, on Lions Road, that's going to be at a higher price point as well. But yes, our prices are kind of just they're normalizing a little bit back to like the 2019 prices, but great homes that are well done and well priced are still going very quickly within days.
Oh wow, we're still staying on the market a little bit longer than normal. I'm seeing houses now stay on the market 30 days, some even to 90 days, unfortunately. So the buyers over here aren't so much in a hurry as they were probably about a year ago or even 6 months ago.
Yeah. I think it also depends on the price point, because the interest rates increasing has slowed down, I would say $350,000 to $500,000 buyer, because it now pushes them outside of their comfort zone and what they can afford. Right. So, but no, we definitely have houses that are sitting 30, 60, 90 days. Absolutely. But those are the sellers that aren't understanding what the market is doing. So if you don't shift with the market, I mean, it's, we don't dictate what the prices are as realtors. The market does. that's really what a seller needs to concentrate on.
I agree. And let's talk really briefly before we move to the next topic of HOAs. Do you have like an average over there? Or because I know over here our HOAs are kind of getting out of control, anywhere between 400 to 600 a month, depending on the amenities. I mean, I know personally my HOAs went up about $75 this past year. I mean, into 2023.
Right. So typically, again, it depends on price point, and I'm assuming we're talking about single family homes.
Yes.
But it's going to be probably between anywhere in the 300s to, I would say, 600s, but probably 3s to 4s. And that's a price point around high 6s, maybe 700s to 800s. And again, that also depends on, is it an older area with a great neighborhood, right? Great HOA, great amenities, but an older area, or is it in the new development? We do have some new developments, newer developments, some that have been closed out, and then there's one that's there's a few that are still new, but they're at the higher price point. So they're, like you get into them at $1 million and up, and so those HOAs are a little more expensive. Or you go out to like the West Lakes of the world, and then those are like $100 and you have great amenities. But again, you're about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on which downtown city you want to be at.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a little bit all over the map for both of us, as far as like, for us, condos can be as high as 600, but also but we don't have a ton of HOA communities here, by the way. Okay. Like the area that I live in is not an HOA community, but like just a mile up the road, there is one. So it's very much like this one has it, this one doesn't, this one has it, this one doesn't. But in St. Pete, there's not a lot, if any, HOAs over there, except for condos and townhomes and that sort of thing. So I try to, if people are steering away from HOAs, I try to take them out of the condo townhome search and keep them into single family homes, which can be good because you can find a smaller single family home that's also affordable or even the same price as a condo, but then you don't have to worry so much about those HOAs, and that gives you a little bit more money to spend on the home. So I'm working with a client right now, same thing. She's like, well, do I do condo or do I do home? And then if I factor in the HOA, so we're playing that kind of roulette right now about which way we're going to go. So you do have a little bit more variety. You're not really stuck with having to pay HOAs. You can find communities all around that don't have HOAs. But as you well know, those master plan communities, those larger brand new communities, they're always going to have HOAs, and they're probably going to have CDDs.
Yes, some of them do, some of them don't. I agree with you. So we have both. We have non-HOA homes. I would say it's at least half, if not more. But what I've noticed is that the people from my YouTube channel that are relocating here, they're relocating from another state, they're relocating from another country a lot of times, and Me too, yeah. Their main thing, obviously, and it would be mine as well, is safety. And I think that it's something that we should touch upon, because a gated community in an HOA doesn't necessarily mean it's safer. So I think it's the sense of safety that you're getting. And in some cases it can be safer, but there are very few that are really truly manned gates that are armed guards, which are very few, and also have a security patrolling the development. And those HOAs are going to be much more costly because you're actually paying for all of those services. Now, back to your point about condos, we have lots of high-rise condos, all kinds of condos in the area up and down the coast, and then also inland. The ones on the coast are going to be well over $1,000 very easily for the HOA.
Wow. Okay.
Because there's a lot of upkeep that the building has to have. So sometimes there's concrete restoration, which is the most expensive part of the HOA maintaining that building. That happens anywhere between like every 20-ish years. It could be a little bit less. It could be 20, 30, 40 years. But concrete restoration is a huge job, and it's very expensive. Then also we have a lot of those condos are older, so they have to redo the clubhouses, they have to redo the elevators, they have to redo and modernize the buildings. So that can be expensive too. A lot of them also upgraded to hurricane impact windows and doors. So, it's kind of good to find condos that all that has already been done. Otherwise, it's going to come out through special assessments, and the maintenance makes that HOA much higher than a single family home or a townhouse.
I agree. I haven't seen $1,000 HOA on our coastline yet. So, but it might be coming, again, as we're growing and our beaches are becoming even more popular with, the vacationers and snowbirds and such. But I wanted to go back to the gated community because you and I had talked about this. I ran into a gated community recently where, they don't have a guard gate, but you can get through by dialing a number, and they have, a gate, but yet to the side, there's an opening. So anybody can walk in and out. And so there is that false sense of safety in some of these communities. So you might be paying extra for these security features, but they're not really secure. So you have to keep all of that in mind. I know you and I discussed this extensively with our clients. So just to be clear, because I did have a conversation this week with a woman who she and her family they specifically want a gated community. And I was like, well, I can find you gated, but it's not really, what are you looking for? She's like, well, I really am looking for the community features. I was like, okay, that's different. You can get those community features and you might not have a gate. Some do, some don't. But if that's what you're really looking for, that's not necessarily only in gated communities. But I think in other cities, that's the case. It's just the gated communities have those, amenities that people are looking for. So that's not necessarily so over here.
Right. And I do have to admit, I have gone through many a gated community and just followed a car in. It's so easy to get in.
I do too. Oh, yeah.
There have been times where I've had to show and I couldn't get in touch with the agent who was supposed to let me in or the homeowner. And I've had to follow somebody in. I've actually did that when I was a teenager and I was just patient and I didn't want to wait in line. I do it right in front of the guard gate. So they have cracked down a little bit where some HOAs that have gates, they have like a double arm and those are harder to get through. And again, those more upscale ones that have like the guard with the gun and security and the little car and they'll come chasing after you, but it's not that often. So good point.
Right. Yes. Well, let's move on to the next topic then. I think we covered everything in that, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about beaches, because that's always a big topic with my clients when we're talking about the East Coast versus the West Coast. And, the West Coast, we've got the Gulf of Mexico, we've got warm waters, we've got crystal clear water, we've got bright, white, sandy beaches. You can float, you can boat, you can fish, do all the things. And so, as a kid, my mom would take us over to the East Coast when it was super, super hot over here to get to the cool water to go float. So I think that's also something people need to know too. Like, you guys have cooler water and you can speak to the rest of that.
We have, so are you saying that your water temperature is cooler than ours?
No, I'm saying our water temperature is warmer than yours. If you want cooler water, you guys have traditionally, I think the Atlantic is cooler than the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. So yes, the ocean is totally different. I love our beaches and I love our ocean. And the reason why I love it is because it's vibrant and it does have like attitude, right? Like you just never know what you're going to get when you go to our beaches. It could be calm. It could be completely rough, or it could be something somewhere in between. Right. And it's funny because I love everything in, on, and around the ocean. I'm a Florida girl. Like I grew up on the water.
Me too. Yep.
And I actually love it when it's rough. I like to do stand-up paddleboard in the ocean when there are waves because for me,
you're brave.
For me, it gives me more of a challenge, and it's not boring. So it really depends on what you like. I will say one thing I think I like a little bit more, or I enjoy when I go to the West Coast, is the finer sand. But also fishing, and I grew up fishing, and a lot of people do like to fish. Here in the Atlantic Ocean, the deep sea fishing is right off of our coast.
Yeah.
In the Gulf Coast, if you're going to go fishing, you're spending a lot more time getting out to deep water. You're spending a lot more in gas, and I think it's about the same once you get out there, but it just takes a little bit longer. So if you're
I I agree. I agree because we take our boat out into the bay, and my boyfriend's always trying to fish, and he's never catching much but catfish, So you do have to kind of go out and go past everything and really get into that Gulf water to really get anything good. So yeah, I think you guys have it in spades when it comes to fishing. I do think I have to say, because I'm a sunset girl, I do love our West Coast sunsets. They're like nothing else. I mean, I lived in California and they have beautiful sunsets, but the Florida sunsets are amazing. But you guys have some pretty good sunrises, so it just depends on what you prefer.
I'm not usually at the beach for sunrise. I have been, but not usually. And I've never really noticed that about sunsets. I think our skies in general in Florida, wherever you are, especially on the more southern, mid to southern, the skies are so incredible, and you can get that anywhere. They go into these purples and pinks and oranges and all types of blends of those colors in the sky. And it's really like artwork in the sky. It's beautiful. I always look up and go, wow, we're so lucky to live here.
So let's talk about red tide real quick. Obviously, it's a hot topic over here on the West Coast. Obviously, it's water temperature. I think I actually looked up exactly what it is. It's the microscopic algae that produces toxins that kill fish and make shellfish dangerous to eat. And obviously, the smell is bad. And I think it's a combination of when the water gets warm and cold, with the temperatures are kind of all over the place, wouldn't you say?
I don't know that much about red tide, except for I looked it up. I don't feel like we have it here. I know that I've heard that we do. But it's like never an issue. I personally have never experienced red tide on the East Coast, but I'm not saying it doesn't exist. But I do know that it exists more on the West Coast. I think it's because of the way also that you have the Gulf and it's kind of enclosed. It's the harmful gas, not harmful. Yeah, I guess they are harmful gases that are
bacteria.
Bacteria, and it kind of bothers people that has like that. It can bother your respiratory system.
You have asthma,
allergies, eyes, itchy eyes, coughing, wheezing. I actually had a couple of clients that were looking either East Coast or West Coast. The wife experienced red tide on the West Coast, and then they were terrified to buy anywhere in Florida, and I don't think they ever did. And I told them, I said, well, we really don't experience it that much over here that I know of. I never hear about red tide except for on the West Coast.
Here's the thing I think is kind of interesting about people, especially because you're coming to a state you don't know anything about, and the news talks about red tide, hurricanes, alligators, all these things. And I was talking to somebody this week from YouTube they were asking about hurricanes and flood, and it goes along the lines of being afraid of red tide. It's like, it doesn't happen all the time. These are like very rare occurrences. It has to be a perfect storm for red tide and a hurricane. And, alligators aren't walking around, smoking cigarettes, walking around the street.
Right.
I think people
down the road.
Yeah, it's like, if you're going to go stand up paddleboarding in a spring, you're going to see an alligator. If you're going to go into some sort of water area that's a little bit enclosed, and with mangroves, you need to be careful. They're just not in our backyard, unless you're up against a preserve, per se. But and there are a lot of things.
You're going to find them in their natural habitat. And if they're in like a spring or in a national park, they're usually pretty used to seeing humans canoeing, paddleboarding, walking on the walkways, or what have you. But
they don't want to mess with us. They don't want to be near us.
Yeah. So the news will blow up any type of news story like that. And is it something that can happen? Yes. Is it that often? No.
No, exactly. Okay. All right, so let's move on and let's talk about the people, the differences between the people on the West Coast and the East Coast. I'll just really quickly say, I feel like the people on the West Coast are super friendly. I can't go anywhere with a grocery store, a bar, the gas station without somebody saying, hey, how's it going today? Very open and friendly. It's gotten a little less since COVID, but not by much. And yeah, go ahead and speak to that yourself.
I don't know if people randomly say hello to me in the grocery store, but I'm a firm believer in no matter where you live or no matter where you're at, you're going to find a variety of people. Now, the questions that I do get are, and I have come across attitude for sure. Like it definitely exists here. But again, like I just ignore people like that and I move along my merry way. There are, I think, the differences as far as like where we have in Florida, we have people that move here from everywhere, but it is in general, like there's a lot of Northeasterners that move to the East Coast in general. I know you have them too. And then there's more Midwesterners that move to the West Coast. So that I have noticed, like when I go over, my sister lives in Tampa, so I'm there often. And I do notice that I might find some more Midwesterners, but we have those here too. So
yeah, and we're starting to get the East Coasters too, with the New Yorkers and New Jersey and Pittsburgh and Illinois and all those people as well. And so I think that's why we're sort of becoming that mixed bag of personalities as well. I think I'm of the same mindset, April. It's like if you are nice and walking around being nice to people and talking to people, you'll get that in return. And the people that don't want to talk to you aren't going to talk to you. But I wouldn't say people kind of come at me, but or other people I've heard stories about. None of that. I still think, all in all, Tampa, but Florida as a whole, I still think we're a pretty friendly state. Yeah. But I'm biased. So let's move on to safety. That's a loaded question on the West Coast. It's a little all over the place.
Ditto. Right. So everybody wants safety, and unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world.
Right.
So there are going to be areas, and us being realtors, there's certain things that we cannot say. Florida law, right? We have to be ethical. We have to not steer. And I don't know what websites you use, but I always direct my clients to niche.com, which is a great one. Exactly. Yep. And also greatschools.org for, for ratings on schooling if you have children. And then, listen, talking to people. When people come here and we go see homes, a lot of times there'll be neighbors out in the neighborhood, and I'll stop and talk right with my clients and have them describe the neighborhood to people. Of course, you can't always rely on that. And then there's Facebook chats. There's all kinds of stuff that people can do on their own. And then when you come here, I think it's pretty obvious when you come and visit a place. And that's the most important thing. If you're moving to another location, it's really important to be able to come here if you've never been here before. I do have, and I'm sure you have also, I've closed many homes virtually, but most of the time those are people that have been here and they kind of know.
Right. Are they vacationers on and off in the area? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to say, like, for St. Petersburg, this is an ongoing thing that I have to, be careful what I say. But to some people, there's parts of St. Pete that don't look the greatest, but they're not safe.
Agreed.
But then there's parts of St. Pete that are not safe. And so it is hard, as what I try to explain to people is that people ask me, is this a safe area? And I have to be politically correct and say what I can say, and take people to the areas that I know are going to have the things that they want. And so anyway, just for an example, the condo community I live in is a little all over the place. I was just having this conversation with my neighbor who sits on our HOA board. We have cameras because we have boats and we're sitting on a canal, and there, are people walking around our community, and we just had somebody kicked out because they were selling drugs. They were renting. And so, but I live in what I don't feel unsafe here. Right. But technically, this area, it wouldn't have the greatest safety rating.
Right.
But I don't feel unsafe. Now, I lived in Southern California, and I lived in Austin, Texas, and I lived in Atlanta, and I've lived in some areas that were not necessarily safer or not as safe as here. And I had issues. I had stalkers. I had cars broken into. I had all that kind of stuff. Here, I don't feel unsafe. But again, it just depends on where everybody's coming from. And of course, if you have children, that is a huge concern for people. So I just wanted to say that St. Pete, because I don't know if you know this, but back in the day, back when, Cops was a big show, St. Pete was always on that show because it was the big meth capital.
Oh my God. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
You're right. Oh, wow.
decades it's been turning over, which is a great thing. It's a wonderful place to hang out, but there's still some of that, going on that you can't get completely rid of. You can't do a clean slate of every neighborhood,
Absolutely. Listen, 20 years ago, Delray Beach was like, you'd go from 95 to the beach and you'd hear gunshots. It was great. Like, you didn't even want to get off on Atlantic Avenue. Now it is like bustling. Everybody wants to be there. It's the hot spot. I absolutely love hanging out in the beach. I have an office there. It feels very safe, but there are still a couple pockets where it's like still changing over. And to your point, like, we live here and we're used to the different terrain and the different environment and the different non-gated and non-HOA areas where, you have like older homes. They all may look different. Some are well kept, some aren't. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a safe or unsafe area. So I totally agreed. I know exactly what you're talking about, but I think what it is that if I was moving to another state, and especially if I had children, or if I was just like a single woman or what have you, you're just trying to deduct in your head, how do you pick the safest? And for families with children, I do think those gated developments and the HOAs of the world, they're great because a lot of the kids will have their friends that are, jumping on the bus together or biking to school together, or the moms are carpooling, or, or even just after school on the weekends, all the kids are getting together and they're kind of, you're in with the same type of people that are in your stage of life.
Exactly. More children focused. And those communities, once you're in them, the kids are safer because they've got sidewalks and they can ride their bike and they can ride their bike maybe they can go 3 blocks down to the little playground that's within the community and they'll be fine.
Or go to the clubhouse and cause mischief when they become teenagers.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've covered a little bit of safety because, again, as we both know, people have to do their own due diligence and check out websites, and it's a feel thing, I think, for most people. So let's talk about schools for a second because, Florida's notorious for having horrible schools.
Yes.
The rest of the country.
But it's great to go right into schools because I think that when you find schools that are in better grades, like A's and B's, you will find those areas are the ones that you want to live in.
Yes, that have that community feel, let's say,
Yeah. So I think,
more family focused, I think.
Yeah. And
because
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say real quick, the ratings, what I've noticed is some of the ratings, they might give it a C, but then what people that live here and have kids going there saying, no, this is a great school. And we have public, charter, and private. So there are options.
Yes. And we have magnet schools also. You guys probably have magnet.
You too. Good.
So yeah, I get calls. I mean, I would say the majority of my clients are raising children. They're either going to have children or they have babies or they have school-age children. So this is a very common question for me. And there's so many areas where I serve that have great school districts. So there's lots of options and there are lots of price points to those options. So, but again, we are in the Southeast, Florida corridor, and at $350 or $400 for a single family home, that's really not going to happen. So, given the price point that we have here, I can show you lots of different neighborhoods within the county or maybe in a few other counties that have great school zones.
It's a little harder for us, I think, because our good schools are spread out. And so if I've got a client that's looking to be closer to the beach, there's like Steinbrenner High School is not close to the beach. It's sort of in the north part of Tampa, but it's closer to those developed communities.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. Or I've got Alonzo High School in my backyard, basically. And they say on some of the websites it's not a good school, but then I have friends whose kids went there and did very well. And went off to universities and did the thing. And that neighborhood, it's called West Chase, is a really great neighborhood, but it butts up against what we would call a not so pretty neighborhood, or, whatever, description you want to give it. So It's a little all over the place. I do think I'm noticing some shifting happening. So I think having people relocate here and it's shifting the landscape even in the school districts, I think. But a lot of my clients, I try to tell them, go check out charter schools, because I think we have some really good charter and magnet schools as well.
Absolutely.
Private schools are obviously, the wait lists and the money and all that kind of thing. That's one way to go. But some of our public schools are actually really good too. Yeah. But the rating system, I don't think is really indicative of what's really going on. So it is visiting the school, taking your child, getting the vibe, talking to the teachers, doing the whole dance,
There's nothing like coming into the location, driving around, getting the feel for it, meeting with the school, and, doing all the things, right? Doing all the research and doing all the things to make the best decision. But agreed that most of the, A-rated school zones are not the ones closer to the water.
Exactly. Well, and it sounds like we're sort of in the same boat on the East Coast and West Coast as far as schools. What do you say? Okay.
Absolutely.
And last but not least, we got to talk about weather, and maybe let's touch upon hurricanes, because it's a very different experience being on the East Coast during a tropical storm and hurricane than it is being on the West Coast. So I'll let you start.
Well, I mean, I honestly, like, everybody talks about hurricanes, and, people call me, they're like, oh, I don't want to be near an area that you can be hit with a hurricane. And I'm like, it's Florida. So
right.
That's
good luck getting away from that. Yeah.
And then look what's happened in the last several years. Texas has been hit, Mississippi, Alabama, New Jersey, New York. You can be hit by a storm or be in the Midwest and go through tornadoes, or, look at that crazy cyclone thing that just hit California. So
California. Yeah.
I just say, look, you have to be prepared. It's part of life here. Is it going to happen to you every day or even every year? No.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm just used to it. I'm used to, like, being prepared, and maybe it'll hit, maybe it won't. If it's really bad, I might leave, but most likely
I was gonna ask you that. Like, do you find that most people evacuate or no? Ian, did Ian make you guys evacuate?
No. Okay. Ian was
it didn't really get near you, did it? Did it come? No. Did it come near your side?
No. Ian hit the West Coast, so there was no need for us to evacuate. Listen, if it's a category 4 or anywhere in between a category 4, I take very, very great caution. If it was coming straight to us and it was a category 4, I probably would leave. Just because I have been through, I went through Hurricane Andrew, and I never want to do that again. But since Hurricane Andrew, all of our building codes, all of our regulations changed, but I still respect Mother Nature, and I know that her force can be way greater than any human can try and preserve, right? So
I think that's the good thing about, when you do have these big hurricanes, even though it's unfortunate, is that I think on both sides of the coast, and I think the whole state of Florida, they revamped, what the codes are, how a hurricane impact windows and roofs and foundation and all that. And I think FEMA actually did a rezoning, at least they did on our side, of what the flood zone is, and they're now doing a lot of it based on the property and the elevation of the property. And so I talk to people about that too, because I'm in a red hot flood zone because I'm right here on a canal off of the bay, but my condo sits up, right? So when that seawall, even if it floods over the seawall, it doesn't get anywhere near my property, right. But we're up high, so we have trees. So really, we have to worry about windows and that sort of thing.
Well, and that's the thing, is that you can't. No hurricane is the same. And so, how fast is it going? Is it more wind? Is it more rain? What is the speed of which it's traveling, and what do they expect when it hits landfall? People don't realize, like, not every hurricane is the same. They're so different, right. And there's so many aspects to a hurricane that you have to pay attention to. So. And flood zones change. Like, that's not the only time they change flood zones. They actually change them whenever they feel like it, or whenever they think necessary. And my sister, who lives in Tampa, she's actually, her house, the front of the house is in one zone and the back of the house is in another. So, I've
never heard of that. That's bizarre.
Yes. Well, I know, because when Ian came through, she checked it out, and she was like, that's when she realized that. So you do have to be knowledgeable, be prepared, pay attention,
Yes.
and be safe. That's the main.
And you get noticed, and I think that's what people forget. Like when I lived in California, I lived through the Northridge earthquake. I couldn't remember there for the name. The Northridge earthquake. I had moved to Los Angeles 5 days prior.
Wow.
And then the Northridge earthquake. So I've been through earthquakes. I've been through fire. I've been through flood. I've been through all of that. And the reason why I think Florida, and as you mentioned in the beginning too, is like every state now is having some sort of catastrophe, but at least we get notice, so a lot of people can make their plan and just decide, hey, let me just get out of town and ride this thing out. And, a lot of us just write it out, but that's a decision everybody has to make. But you're right. Like Ian, I was telling some clients too, like with Ian, the news had it all like, and of course it did devastation to Fort Myers, but it was supposed to come to us. Yeah. And I think it was a Cat 3 or 4. And we thought it was going to slow down. Right. But it wasn't. And so we were really, really worried we were going to end up like Fort Myers. And at a certain point you have to go, okay, because we can't control Mother Nature. And the reality was we didn't have any flooding. We had a lot of wind and we had a lot of debris. That was it. Now, some people had shingles and stuff, but
and that's the thing, because the meteorologists, they don't know exactly where it's going to hit. They can only give you an estimation. So, and Ian came very quickly. From the moment that Ian was actually detected to the landfall, and for like when we started hearing about it to landfall was about a week. That's a very, very short time. Usually we have several weeks or, start watching. I know, because I never pay attention until it's about 10 days out. I'm like, okay, should I pay attention? So
exactly.
That's why, and my mom always calls me and says, hey, April, pay attention. She usually does that within 2 weeks. And I'm like, But this one, I know it came very quickly and it can hit within, several miles. So that's why Tampa thought it was going to be hit. And then it went a little further south. And then I think that a lot of people that relocate here that maybe weren't paying attention, and a lot of people in like the mobile homes and things like that, they didn't evacuate, and it's absolutely tragic.
Yes, it really is.
But so I mean, we have hurricanes here, so
we have hurricanes.
But
as far as
the other part of weather, I know that my sister, like again, I know because my sister is usually about 10 degrees cooler on because you're a little bit further north and west.
That's true. Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. I was wondering what the weather temp is like. So how hot does it get in the summertime? Is your August and September atrocious?
Yep, it sure is. Okay. I hate it. There's no denying it. I'm not going to lie about any of that. When it gets up to 95, 96 degrees and 110% humidity, like a wet rag hitting you in the face, it's horrible.
It's horrible.
We stay inside a lot, in the summertime. I go from air-conditioned home to air-conditioned car to air-conditioned retail or restaurant or what have you. I'm not sidewalk cafeing it at all until October comes around. But, or we get away, we go do vacations. I would love to grab a house on the West Coast or somewhere nice, maybe in Colorado, and, spend out my summers there.
I know a lot of people that do that, especially in August and September. They kind of either go to the mountains or go up to North Carolina or somewhere where it's a little bit cooler. Yeah. I know for us over here, that's when we really just stay in the water. We go float. Mm-hmm. Or it's just our bodies are just staying in the water and having a cocktail. So, but I think it's, people, you do get used to it. I think this last summer, at least for us, felt hotter. I've been back now 5 years, and this was the hottest summer I've experienced in the past 5 years.
I didn't feel that way about this summer. I felt like it was milder, especially humidity wise. It was still hot.
I got lucky.
Right. I felt like it was hot. Okay. It was hot. Don't get me wrong. But I felt like the humidity was lower. And then this past summer, 2021, that's when the West Coast and Midwest Coast was having that horrible heat wave.
Yeah.
So I felt like we were pretty lucky.
Well, I think we absorbed all that for you. So we had all the humidity, and by the time it got to you, it was already filtered.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate that.
Exactly. You're welcome. That's an advantage, right, on the East Coast. But it was really crazy. And as far as rain, we don't get a lot of rain. I tell people it rains in the season from about 4 o'clock, 3 to 4 to 5 on and off, and it stops, and then it's blue skies. You can travel a mile down the road and no rain. You could be at the beach and it's raining, but it's not raining inland, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Do you have that too?
In the summertime, we usually have a summertime shower almost every day, and it's anywhere between that 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock hour. It could literally be raining on one side of my house and the other side is not raining. Like, it's so crazy. And it usually lasts between 10-15 minutes, and it could last up to 40-ish minutes. Normally it's around 20 to 25 minutes. It dumps down, it becomes very dark, dumps down, it might get windy, it might not, and then it's gone.
And I think that's what's the cool thing about Florida, is because obviously we're a thin peninsula. So as that wind is kind of coming, it's like it rains, and then moves out. So it doesn't really ruin a lot of plans, unless it's a tropical storm, of course. But so I tell people too, is like, if it's raining at the beach and you see a dark cloud, get out of the water, get in your car, hang out, let it pass, and get back into the beach, But I think people also forget we're the lightning capital of the country, I think. Mm-hmm. So if you see lightning, you need to get away from it. Get out of the water in particular.
It is the small price we pay for living in a very outdoor, yearly, annual, like, we can be outdoor all the time lifestyle.
Yes.
And for the most part, beautiful weather.
So what is your winter like? So what are you guys having right now?
Today it's kind of cool, actually. It's a little bit overcast. I'm looking up the temperature right now. It's 68 degrees, and what time is it right now? It's about 12:30. So it was like 61 when I woke up this morning. It will get into the low 60s again tonight and tomorrow. So it's a tiny bit of a cool snap. It's the perfect kind of cool snap that we like. And then we have had 2 cold snaps into the 40s this year, which is extremely unusual. Like, we normally don't get that low.
I was going to say, I don't think you guys get that low. We've been, like, this morning, it was, when I was walking the dog, it was 48. And I think we're going to get to a high about 65 or 66 today.
Oh, wow.
Then tomorrow, I think it's supposed to be 78. And then I think on Sunday, it's supposed to be 80. And then it's going to be about 78, 80 for a couple of days. Then we're going to drop into the 60s again. So for us, our winter is very much like this. One day it's hot, one day it's cold, one day it's hot, one day it's cold.
So
until about 8.
You're about 10 degrees cooler than we are in general.
Well, I hope this video was informative to you. I think April and I touched upon a lot of topics, but I hope it really helped you kind of narrow down which coast may be right for you. But as always, you're gonna have to come visit to check that out for yourself. But don't forget, April and I are here to help you. And of course, this is my channel, so you can reach out to me. My links are below, and I'd love to help you on your relocation journey. And you can hit my calendar link and jump on my calendar for 30 minutes, and we can have a discussion about your relocation goals, and I can answer your questions as well. But as always, I really appreciate it, guys, if you'd hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and that thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. And don't forget, leave a comment if you have something to add. Which coast do you like, East Coast or West Coast? Let me know in the chat. All right, guys, till next time, I'll see you around. Bye-bye.